Can I take you to the Pence op-ed in the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah.
Wow. Speaking of January 6th and election denialism, it's like when I heard it, I started to feel like a sadness for Donald Trump. You know, I do feel sad that he had his first term ruined by all these bullshit allegations about Russia, and just the press never let up on him. They were determined to ruin his presidency. And to his credit, he kept fighting. You know, he did fight. And he got a lot of great things done. But the thing about election denialism was like a robot malfunctioning. Like you just can't get it to stop malfunctioning. Like that chip went wrong and you just can't write it. He couldn't see it. He's so averse to losing and losers. He just wasn't able to say, this one got away. I made history in 2016. The country's in a different mood and I lost this one. Couldn't do it. And Mike Pence, for the first time, describes in this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal the extraordinary exchange that they had right after January 6th on Capitol Hill. I'll give you a couple of highlights. I met with the president on January 11th. He looked tired and his voice seemed fainter than usual. How are you? He began. How are Karen and Charlotte? I replied tersely that we were fine and told him they had been at the Capitol on January 6th. Of course, this is when Trump had antagonized Pence. His supporters were screaming, hang Mike Pence. Trump had tweeted out aggressive tweets about Mike Pence at this time. Mike Pence was in danger that day. There's no question. And it was in large part, because of Donald Trump. So Trump's telling him, my kid and my wife were with me at the Capitol. Trump responded with a hint of regret. I just learned that. He then asked, were you scared? No, I replied. I was angry. You and I had our differences that day, Mr. President, and seeing those people tearing up the Capitol infuriated me. Those are strong words from Mike Pence, who is like a soft-spoken guy, especially in his dealings with Trump, reportedly. He started to bring up the election, saying that people were angry, but his voice trailed off. I told him he had to set that aside, and he responded quietly, yeah. I said, those people who broke into the Capitol might have been supporters, but they're not our movement. And he went on from there. With genuine sadness in his voice, the president mused, what if we hadn't had the rally? What if they hadn't gone to the Capitol? Then he said, it's too terrible to end like this. It's sad. It's sad because Trump did a lot of good. You know, for all the personal problems he had and so on, he fought and he did a lot of good. And he's recognizing in this moment what just happened and how he's tarred his own legacy by this nonstop election denialism talk and so on. Then it goes on from there. He seemed discouraged, so I reminded him that I was praying for him. Don't bother, Trump said. As I stood to leave, he said, it's been fun. A privilege, Mr. President, I answered. Yeah, with you, he said. Walking toward the door leading to the hallway, I paused, looked the president in the eye, and said, I guess we'll just have to disagree on two things. What? Said Trump. I referred to our disagreement about January 6th, and then I said, I'm also never going to stop praying for you. He smiled. That's right. Don't ever change. That whole thing makes me so sad. Mike Pence was this loyal soldier. He, more than probably anybody in the White House, was loyal to Trump, wouldn't publicly criticize Trump, didn't resign after Jan 6th like some of the administration did. He tried to do his best for this guy, personally and professionally, and for the country. But saying that the election was fake was a bridge too far. And not certifying the count was not an option, contrary to what Trump and others told the world. He didn't even have the power to do what Trump wanted him to do. And still, Trump did sick the mob on him. And he was in danger that day along with his wife and child. And here they are. This is the moment. This is like the chance when they had to address the total disloyalty Trump showed Pence. And Pence in this moment is a classy guy, as I think he usually is. And Trump himself seems to be wrestling with his own behavior and the fracture of this relationship, which I do think was somewhat important to him, recognizing how bad it was. It's too terrible to end like this. My God. What do you guys think about it?
I mean, you're full of sadness. I'm filled with anger. It makes me super angry, assuming that the whole thing is true as written. Because all right, he felt a sense of a tinge of regret, and then what did he do? in the weeks and months and years since then. He aggressively pushed for people who believed in the thing that he said maybe shouldn't have happened to win elections and primaries in specifically divided states. So bit crocodile tears for me. I appreciate Pence absolutely turning the other cheek in this situation. I'm a very mild-mannered person. I would want to kick the guy in the nuts. You endangered my wife and my daughter. Fuck you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that in there too. Like, no, I mean, you can, if as it's rendered, is again, if that is true, it's so hard to imagine Donald Trump having tinges of regret like this. And I'm not trying to sort of dehumanize him in any way, but this has happened with so many people. So many people have been loyal to him, who have been by his side and tried to do right by him, that, you know, one or two things went wrong. And then he just, I mean, you have to be like him to accept that. So if you're Steve Bannon, and I've spent some time with Bannon, you know, Bannon was booted out of the White House fairly quickly, right? And then he starts denouncing him, calling him sloppy Steve and the rest of it. And then Bannon comes back because they're very similar that way. It's a bit of a, you know, a kabuki theater, a bit of, you know, professional wrestling, that's okay. But for people like Mike Pence, who, you know, you can hate him, you can dislike his politics, whatever, seems like a pretty genuine and a pretty sensitive guy. And he's, you know, put in a sort of impossible situation here. Yeah. But, you know, on that day, it's just, you know, had he walked that back and gone to your point and publicly said this was something that was wrong, as, you know, like, I mean, you see guys like Kevin McCarthy come and denounce January 6th and then walk that back. If Trump had gone out there and said, and given the signal to these people and just said, look, you know, these people have a right to protest. They have a right to be angry. I'm with you. I understand it. But we cannot have this kind of violence. You cannot be shouting that my vice president should be hung up on the gallows in the ellipse in front of the Capitol is madness. But, you know, Trump's thing is that at the end of it, I've always thought this, that the overwhelming thing in his brain, the thing that washes over any sense of reason is, as Megyn said, this idea of winning. And I'll give you a brief example of this. I think this has been reported, but a friend of mine worked for Donald Trump for many, many years. And he told me a story that, and it was during The Apprentice. And he said that every time someone would come into his office, he had a stack, and I think this has been reported, a stack of the ratings printed out next to his desk, a stack of them. People would come in and ask nothing. He would sign them and give them to them. And they'd be baffled. They're like, what? And he'd be like, it's the ratings. We're #1 show. And just that mentality of constantly winning, constantly being richer than you are, constantly having more voters than you actually had, more people at the inauguration than you did. There's some kind of mental block that it wreaks havoc on everything else. Because I understand Megyn's point too, is that if you are somebody who is a devoted MAGA person, it's like, stick to the things that you did and you did well. You know, the New York Post is right in the coverage today, didn't build the wall. But if you're somebody who likes, you know, some of the regulation stuff that's pretty interesting, I'm not a fan of the trade stuff, but, you know, the guy did things during his presidency. But it's all overwhelmed by this personal sense of grievance, and also this personal sense of that if he's not, you know, on top of everything, then there's something wrong. You know, so I get in the sense that I think it's sad in that way, because I think there's something just slightly defective about the way he thinks about everything.
I've never been able to compost before. I didn't even know what it was. It was always too complicated, too much work, and sounded like only something some far lefty in San Francisco would do. Wrong. It's actually fun and something your whole family's going to enjoy, thanks to Lomi. Lomi allows you to turn your food scraps into dirt with the push of a button, and it makes you feel like a better person. Lomi is a countertop electric composter that turns scraps into dirt in under 4 hours. There's no smell when it runs. There's no sound, really. It's super quiet. And thanks to Lomi, I now have way less garbage each week. Instead, I turn this waste into nutrient-rich dirt that I can then feed to my plants, completing the life circle. Now I'm composting and creating soil instead of waste. I have a basically limitless supply of dirt from my garden. And if you would like to join me in this endeavor and start making a positive environmental impact, fun for the whole family, or if you just want to make cleanup after dinner that much easier, Lomi is perfect for you. Head to lomi.com/MK. lomi.com/MK. Use the promo code MK to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/MK and use that promo code MK at checkout. Food waste is gross. Lomi is your solution. With the holidays just around the corner, Lomi will also make the perfect gift for someone on your shopping list. Lomi.com/MK. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.